So, my boyfriend Tyler just told me I'm dead to him because I wouldn't give him my entire freaking paycheck so he could buy some fancy Ford Mustang GT he's been obsessing over for months. And when I say my entire paycheck, I mean literally every single dollar I earn as a pharmacy tech, which isn't exactly rolling in the cash territory, but it's my money that I work 40 hours a week for, dealing with insurance companies and cranky customers who act like I set their drug prices personally. But that's not even the worst part. This absolute clown went online and made a viral post calling me a broke gold digger, which makes 0 sense because he's the one demanding my money. And now half the internet thinks I'm some terrible girlfriend who won't support her man's dreams. The post blew up on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and people I work with have seen it. My co-worker Rachel showed it to me during our lunch break at Walgreens, and I wanted to crawl under the pharmacy counter and disappear forever. When I tried to defend myself in the comments, explaining that I have rent and bills and, need to eat food sometimes, Tyler completely lost it. He called me while I was restocking meds and told me I better delete my comments and stop making him look bad, or he'd leak screenshots of our private text conversations. And I'm talking about private stuff, intimate messages, pictures, conversations about my family drama with my parents' divorce, everything personal I've ever shared with him. He said I better do what he says or everyone would see exactly what kind of person I really am. The pure rage I felt hearing those words while I'm standing there in my work uniform, trying to keep my voice down so customers wouldn't hear me having a breakdown by the thermometer aisle. Who does that? Who threatens someone they claim to love with humiliation and revenge? I had to excuse myself to the employee bathroom and just stood there shaking with anger. And his mum, his freaking mother, had the nerve to message me saying I brought this whole mess on myself for not being supportive enough of her precious son's goals. She wrote a long paragraph about how a real woman would sacrifice for her man and how disappointed she is in my attitude. Like, lady, your 31-year-old son is throwing tantrums because his girlfriend won't bankrupt herself for his midlife crisis car. Linda really had the audacity to tell me that when she was my age, women knew how to put their men first. Ma'am, this is 2025, not 1955. Tyler has been posting updates about how he put me in my place and how women these days don't understand loyalty. His friends are all commenting with fire emojis and calling me names I won't repeat here. Meanwhile, I'm getting messages from strangers telling me I'm selfish and don't deserve him. One girl literally wrote that I should be grateful any man wants to include me in his dreams. The comments are making me sick, but I can't stop reading them. Here's what really gets me though. This car costs $52,000. $52,000. He expects me to hand over my November paycheck, my December paycheck, probably my January and February ones too, so he can drive around feeling like some kind of action hero. When I pointed out that I have student loans, car insurance, groceries, and, oh yeah, my half of the rent for the apartment we share, he actually said those were my problems to figure out. The guy who sleeps in my bed every night and eats the groceries I buy told me my basic living expenses were my problems to figure out while demanding I fund his toy. I make $35,000 a year before taxes. He wants me to hand over more money than I even make in a whole year, just so he can drive something flashier than his buddy Derek. I've been with Tyler for 2 years and 3 months, exactly. We moved in together last spring when his lease ran out, and mine was ending too. Things weren't perfect, but they were decent enough. He pulls in about $60,000 a year, more than me, but apparently not enough for the exact car he suddenly can't live without right now, without planning or saving. This whole obsession kicked off in September when Derek rolled up with a shiny red Chevy Corvette. Suddenly, Tyler decided his own car was embarrassing, and beneath him, he started spending hours every night glued to car listings, shoving pictures in my face like I was supposed to get hyped about going broke for some muscle car. He'd interrupt my favorite shows just to show me another overpriced listing, then sulk when I didn't share his enthusiasm. When I suggested maybe saving first or at least considering a certified pre-owned model that wouldn't drain me dry, he snapped that I didn't understand his vision. His vision apparently required my entire paycheck while he kept his cash for whatever he wanted. He lectured me about how real couples sacrifice for each other's happiness, but in his mind, all the sacrifice was supposed to come from me. Last week, it escalated. He brought up the car every single day during dinner while we were watching TV. Even as I was getting ready for work in the mornings, he kept insisting this car would change his life, give him confidence, and make him feel successful. He said he deserved something nice after working so hard, and that I should want to help. When I pointed out that I also work hard and deserve to cover my basic needs, he brushed it off, saying it was different because his career had real potential, while my job as a pharmacy tech was just filler until I found something better. Except I actually like my job. I'm good at it. I wasn't even looking for anything different until he decided it wasn't impressive enough. Then he whipped out this financing calculator he'd been playing with, showing me exactly how much of my paycheck he planned to use for the next several months. He had it all mapped out, like I'd already agreed to bankroll his fantasy. When I told him absolutely not, his face twisted like I'd just spat in it. That's when he accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, hinting maybe he needed to reconsider our whole relationship if I wasn't willing to invest in our future. Our future, in his mind, meant him cruising around in a Mustang GT while I lived off peanut butter sandwiches for 6 months straight. I tried reminding him that my student loan payments are $450 a month, and if I don't pay my car insurance, I literally can't drive to work, which means I couldn't even earn the money he wants from me. He just rolled his eyes and said I was making excuses, that I wasn't being creative. His so-called creative solutions: ask my parents for cash, pick up more shifts, or sell my belongings. My parents already pitch in on my student loans when things get tight. They're not loaded. They can't just cough up thousands of dollars for their daughter's boyfriend's dream car. And I already work full-time, plus extra shifts when I can. What exactly did he think I could sell? My furniture, my work clothes, my medications? But honestly, after the threats, the public humiliation, and his mother jumping in like backup enforcement, something inside me snapped. I'm not the same girl who tried to be understanding about his car fantasies. The disrespect and manipulation went too far. Tyler thinks he's got me cornered, using threats, online smear campaigns, and his mama's reinforcements. He thinks I'll crack, hand over my money just to make the drama stop, and slip back into being the supportive girlfriend who never asks questions about finances. But here's the twist. Remember how I said Tyler had no idea what was about to happen? Turns out I had no idea either, because this morning turned into a nightmare I'm still trying to process. I was at Safeway doing my weekly grocery run around 10 a.m., sticking to my tight budget while some guy thinks my paycheck belongs to his car fund. I'm loading bags into my car when I hear a voice behind me. Well, 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 if it isn't the selfish girlfriend who won't support her man. I turn around and there's Linda, Tyler's mum, arms crossed, fake sweet smile plastered on her face. She's dressed like she's headed to Sunday service, even though it's a Wednesday morning. My stomach dropped. She launched right in, saying she raised Tyler to expect better from women and was disappointed I turned out so self-centered. In the middle of a grocery store parking lot, she lectured me about how a real woman finds a way to make her man's dreams come true instead of whining about bills and rent. I tried to keep calm, explaining that I have financial responsibilities, but Linda cut me off, saying Tyler told her I was being dramatic and if I really loved him I'd figure it out. Then she added something that made my blood boil. Maybe I wasn't the right kind of girl for her son if I couldn't do this one simple thing. The audacity. This woman cornered me at Safeway, trying to guilt trip me into bankruptcy for her 31-year-old son's car obsession. I told her flat out that Tyler's financial planning wasn't my responsibility, and that since he earns more than me, maybe he should save up like a grown adult. That's when she turned nasty. She sneered that I was raised wrong, that my parents clearly didn't teach me proper values about supporting a partner. She doesn't even know my parents, and dragging them into this. That crossed a line I didn't even know I had. I told her my parents taught me independence and not to let people use me, which honestly are pretty solid values. But Linda's face flushed red as she snapped that this attitude was exactly what's wrong with my generation. We think we're too good to sacrifice for love. Then she pulled out her phone, scrolled, and shoved Tyler's viral post in my face. She started reading the nastiest comments out loud, the ones calling me selfish and materialistic, like it was proof she was right. I asked her if she thought it was appropriate for her son to publicly humiliate his girlfriend online just because he didn't get his way, and she actually said sometimes men have to take drastic measures to get through to stubborn women. According to her, Tyler was just trying to teach me better, like I'm a dog needing obedience lessons. I told her threatening to leak private messages isn't teaching, it's manipulation and emotional abuse. She laughed in my face, said I was being dramatic, and insisted Tyler would never actually hurt me. She claimed he just needed me to understand how serious he was about this car. She kept repeating that if I really loved him, I'd make him happy, even if it meant a temporary inconvenience. Temporary inconvenience. inconvenience, like not being able to pay rent or eat for months. Then she told me something that made me realize this family is completely warped. She bragged that when she was engaged to Tyler's dad, she gave him money for a motorcycle, even though it meant she had to move back in with her parents. She said that's what women do for the men they love. She then said something that made the whole situation even clearer and uglier. Apparently, Brandon had been talking to her for months behind my back, complaining that I wasn't driven enough and that he doubted whether I was girlfriend material. So this wasn't about the car at all. He had been slowly painting me as some sort of unworthy partner who didn't measure up to his so-called standards. The car thing was never just about the car. It was a test, a twisted little experiment to see if I'd wreck my own financial stability just to prove my loyalty. I told Linda straight up that if Brandon had concerns about our relationship, he should have come to me instead of running to his mum for backup. That comment set her off. She snapped that I was being disrespectful and showing exactly why I wasn't good enough. Her voice kept getting louder until people in the grocery store parking lot started to stare. She warned me that if I didn't change my attitude and start acting like a supportive girlfriend, I was going to lose Brandon. She even threw in that he had options and didn't need to settle for someone unwilling to invest in him. That's when I told her any man who thought public humiliation and financial blackmail were acceptable parts of a relationship wasn't a man worth keeping. If Brandon wanted a partner who believed love was a bank loan, maybe he should go find her. Linda practically shook with anger, accusing me of being bitter and spiteful, saying I'd regret ending things over just money. But that's what got to me. She kept calling this a good relationship, as if threats, shame and manipulation were normal, as if my refusal to bankroll her son's ego trip was the real problem. The confrontation dragged on for maybe 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. By the end, she was almost shouting, declaring I was making a huge mistake and that Brandon deserved better. She told me I'd end up alone and miserable if I kept acting like I was too good to compromise for love. I finally cut her off, said I was done, and moved to get in my car. That's when she grabbed my arm and hissed that Brandon would be calling me soon, and that I'd better think carefully about what I wanted to say. She made it clear, either cave in or lose him. The irony, losing him was starting to sound like the best option I'd had in months. After she stormed off, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, stunned. Who sends their mum to ambush their girlfriend in a grocery store parking lot? But as bizarre as it was, the bigger realization hit me. This whole dynamic was upside down. Everything was about what I owed him, how I was failing him, how I should sacrifice for his dreams. Not once did anyone ask what he owed me, or how he should be treating the woman he claimed to love. My boundaries were painted as flaws. His entitlement was framed as suffering. Sure enough, when I got home and started putting away groceries, my phone lit up. Brandon, just like Linda promised. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I knew he'd just keep calling. And honestly, after that ridiculous parking lot ambush, part of me wanted to hear just how deep he'd dig this hole. He opened with fake casual small talk, like his mum hadn't just spent 20 minutes screaming at me in public. I cut him off immediately and asked if he had sent Linda to corner me at the store, or if she'd come up with that brilliant stunt on her own. Brandon got defensive, saying his mother was only trying to help, and that maybe hearing from another woman would make me understand how relationships work. The condescension dripping from his voice when he said that nearly made me throw my phone. I told him flatly that sending his mommy to gang up on me was the opposite of helpful. It just showed me exactly what kind of man I was dealing with. He fired back that I was twisting everything, painting his family as villains when all they wanted was to save our relationship. Then he launched into a speech about how disappointed he was that I couldn't handle a simple request for support. According to him, I just didn't grasp how important this car was to his future success. His words, not mine. I asked how exactly a muscle car was going to transform his career. He snapped that I was being small-minded and missing the bigger picture. He started lecturing me about confidence, image, how successful people invest in appearances. The manipulation was laughably obvious. Every guilt trip, every attempt to make me feel selfish for protecting my own financial stability, it was all recycled nonsense. Normal boyfriends don't try to extort their girlfriends into funding a flashy car. Watching him stumble through these talking points, all I could think was how pathetic it was. And then came the kicker. Brandon said he'd been talking to his friends, and they all agreed I was being unreasonable. He even brought up his buddy Ryan, who bought a Camaro with his girlfriend's help. Brandon pointed out that Ryan's fiancée Emily didn't hesitate to contribute because she understood that his success was their success. I reminded reminded him that Ryan and Emily had been together for years, were engaged, and probably made financial choices together, not by one partner demanding the other's rent money. Brandon brushed that off and claimed I'd just proved his point. Real couples who are serious about their future make big financial decisions together. That's what he claimed anyway. Brandon told me that getting this car wasn't just about having something nice to drive, it was about proving that we were ready to take our relationship to the next level. According to him, couples who can't make sacrifices for each other aren't ready for marriage and probably shouldn't be wasting their time. So in Brandon's twisted logic, draining my bank account for his car was some kind of test to see if I was marriage material. He turned his selfish desire into a measure of my love and commitment. I asked him directly if he was seriously saying that giving him my rent money was the ticket to our future. He doubled down, saying that successful relationships are about sacrifice and compromise from both partners. I pointed out that all the sacrifice seemed to be coming from me, while he kept every cent of his own money for himself. That's when he started yelling, accusing me of making this into some gender war, instead of recognizing that he was building something better for both of us. He even claimed the car would benefit me too, because I'd get to ride in it and be seen with someone who had his life together. Translation: I should be grateful for the privilege of bankrupting myself so he could look impressive in front of his friends. Like being a passenger in a car I couldn't afford was supposed to be the ultimate reward. I told him flat out, if he wanted to impress people with expensive things, he should use his own money like every other grown adult. That's when he crossed a line. Brandon sneered that my job at the pharmacy wasn't even a real career, just something to pass the time until I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. He said that since I wasn't investing in my future, the least I could do was invest in his. That one stung. I've been in pharmacy work for 3 years. I'm good at it. I help people get the medications they need, answer questions, and actually make a difference. But to him, it wasn't flashy or profitable enough to matter. When I told him my career mattered to me, he laughed. He said I was being defensive about a job anyone could do with a little training. According to him, if I cared about having a real career, I'd be working on myself instead of making excuses about bills and rent. The disrespect was so over the top, I actually pitied him. Imagine being so insecure about your own job that you need to tear down your girlfriend's honest work just to feel better. I shot back that at least my work actually helps people, unlike him, shuffling paperwork in an insurance office. That set him off completely. He started screaming that I was being cruel and attacking him, when in reality he'd just spent 10 minutes belittling me. Then he pivoted again. Brandon said he'd been rethinking our whole relationship, wondering if I was the right kind of partner for the life he wanted to build. According to him, successful men need supportive women who understand that sometimes you have to make short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. I asked what gains I was supposed to be getting from going broke for his car. His answer, that I'd gain a boyfriend who felt confident and successful, and therefore could be a better partner to me. So basically, my reward for wrecking my finances would be a slightly happier Brandon. The logic was so pathetic I couldn't help laughing. I told him if his confidence relied on my rent money, maybe he should be working on his self-esteem instead of trying to make it my financial responsibility. That set him off again. He accused me of being mean and unsupportive, then brought up his social media stunt. He said he'd been getting a lot of support from people online who agreed with him, and that maybe I should read the comments to see how others viewed the situation. I almost dropped my phone laughing. He actually thought Facebook trolls were qualified relationship counselors. I told him taking advice from random internet strangers was about as smart as asking a magic 8-ball to plan his future or letting ChatGPT write his budget. What's next, Brandon? Gonna check your horoscope to see if Mercury's in retrograde before deciding our future. The fact that he even suggested this showed how far gone he was. I told him if random people online thought demanding your girlfriend's entire paycheck was normal, then clearly their opinions weren't worth much to me. Maybe he should stick to seeking validation from people who actually understood what a healthy relationship looked like. He sulked and said I was mocking him instead of taking his concerns seriously, which only made me laugh harder. When someone seriously suggests internet strangers should dictate your relationship, what else can you do but laugh? And then he dropped his nuclear option. Brandon reminded me about our private text conversations and said he really hoped he wouldn't have to share them, but that he needed me to take him seriously. He claimed he had screenshots that could look bad out of context. The threat was obvious. No matter how he dressed it up. Pay up or he'd twist our private messages to embarrass me. I told him point blank, threatening to violate my privacy isn't love. He scrambled, saying he wasn't threatening me, just pointing out that private things should stay private. But the message was crystal clear: comply or face the fallout. At this point, I was almost impressed by how many different ways he could find to be awful in one conversation: public humiliation, financial manipulation, emotional blackmail, career insults, and now privacy threats. It was like he had a checklist of toxic behaviors and was determined to try every single one. Finally, he circled back to what this was really about. He said he needed to know if I was the kind of woman who would stand behind his ambitions and support him through everything. If I couldn't do this one small thing for him, how could he trust me to be there for the bigger challenges in life? And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about a car. It was about power. Brandon wanted to establish a dynamic where he could make unreasonable demands and I'd fold. This was a test, not of love, but of control. He wanted me to put his desires above my own basic needs. His goal was clear: control me financially, make me dependent, and break down my boundaries. The phone call dragged on for nearly an hour. He tried every tactic: sweet talk, guilt tripping, even anger. But it all came down to one thing: give him my paycheck and accept that his wants mattered more than my survival. Not once did he admit that his demand was unreasonable. Not once did he acknowledge my concerns about rent, bills, or basic independence. By the end, I was drained, practically lecturing a grown man about personal responsibility and boundaries. It was like trying to teach ethics to someone who simply didn't care. Before hanging up, Malcolm gave me an ultimatum. He said, "I'll give you until Friday to make the right choice." The right choice, of course, being the one where I gave in and proved my love by sacrificing everything. To him, anything else would mean I was selfish, cold, and didn't really care about him. He didn't apologize for the humiliation, the threats, or dismissing my entire career. He was obsessed with his goal, too blinded by selfishness to even fake concern for me. But here's where the story turns, because Friday came, and instead of caving in, I decided to play my own hand. And let me tell you, it turned out better than anything I could have plotted. The night before, I called my dad. I told him everything: Malcolm demanding my paycheck, his mother ambushing me, the social media slander. My dad was furious. He kept asking me to repeat things, like he couldn't wrap his head around someone actually treating me this way. By Friday morning, he called me around 11. He asked if I was at work. I told him I had called in sick. Truthfully, I was too shaken and angry to deal with customers that day. He said, "Good, I need you to come with me. We've got business to handle." Turns out one of his co-workers, Kenneth, had already seen Malcolm's ridiculous Facebook rant and was laughing about it. Kenneth had been reading the comments out loud at work, not realizing he was talking about his co-worker's daughter. When my dad told him who the post was about, Kenneth went dead silent. Then he offered to come along as backup. So my dad picked me up and we drove straight to Malcolm's office. I tried to warn him this might not be the best idea, but my dad wasn't hearing it. He said, "Nobody humiliates my daughter in public and gets away with it. This boy's about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong family." He stormed through that office lobby like he owned the place. The receptionist tried to stop him, but my dad announced loudly that he needed to speak with Malcolm about the lies he'd been spreading about his daughter. Heads turned immediately. People began gathering, curious to see the drama. Malcolm walked out, looking puzzled, until he saw me standing behind my dad. His face drained of colour instantly. My dad didn't waste breath. "Are you the one who posted about demanding your girlfriend's entire paycheck? Are you the one calling her a gold digger online because she said no?" Malcolm stammered, saying it was a misunderstanding and that social media didn't tell the whole story. My dad cut him off. "There's no misunderstanding about a grown man trying to bully his girlfriend out of her rent money for a toy car, then crying on Facebook when she had the guts to refuse." By now, the entire office was watching. Malcolm looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. My dad's voice was calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "What kind of man threatens a woman for not bankrupting herself to fund his hobbies?" Malcolm muttered that private issues shouldn't be dragged into his workplace. My dad shot back, "Then maybe you shouldn't have dragged them onto social media, inviting strangers to insult my daughter." Then my dad delivered blow after blow. He said he'd raised 3 daughters and never once had to explain that real men don't beg women for money. Real men don't send their mothers to fight their battles. Real men don't humiliate the women they claim to love. He asked Malcolm if his own father knew what kind of son he'd raised, because any decent father would be ashamed to see his boy act like such a weak, entitled brat. Malcolm's face turned crimson. He stuttered, tried to backtrack, but my dad wasn't finished. It's pathetic to see a grown man throwing tantrums like a spoiled child who can't have a new toy. Maybe if you spent less time scheming to manipulate women, you could have learned how to be an actual adult. Then he turned to the crowd of co-workers. Have any of you ever seen something like this? A man trying to live off his girlfriend's paycheck while spending her rent money on a car? The silence in the office was damning. Someone in the back muttered that it was the most ridiculous thing they'd ever heard. Finally, my dad dropped the hammer. He told Malcolm he had until midnight to clear his stuff out of my apartment. Anything left behind would be in the dumpster by morning. You lost the privilege of living under my daughter's roof the moment you decided to smear her name for refusing to bankroll your midlife crisis. Malcolm panicked, saying he needed more time. My dad shot him down. Not our problem. Maybe Mummy has a spare room since she's so invested in your love life. You're lucky I'm giving you until midnight instead of tossing you out this very minute. And then, the cherry on top, my dad pulled out his phone. He said, since you're so fond of handling relationship problems in public, let's see you make a public apology. Malcolm begged him not to. He said his job was already on the line, that he couldn't handle more humiliation. But my dad had already hit record. He told Malcolm he could either explain why he thought financial abuse was acceptable, or apologize for being a manipulative coward who used women as ATMs. The office went dead silent. Malcolm's eyes darted around, and then he cracked. He started crying, right there, in front of everyone. He sobbed out an apology, admitting he tried to manipulate me, admitting he used threats, admitting the Facebook post was all about punishing me for refusing to hand over my paycheck. My dad made sure he spelled it out on camera, word for word, why his behavior was wrong. And there was Malcolm, red-faced, trembling, blubbering through an apology while his co-workers stared at him like he was insane. The man who'd spent a week acting like he held all the power had just been stripped of it in the most brutal, public way possible. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.